Hi, welcome back to Kaplan's Career Goals. I'm your host, Kelsey Haslam, and today we're joined by guest Rowan Morrow-McDade. He is Insider's Young Accountant of the Year and the most tax qualified accountant in the UK. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And most tax qualified accountant, how do you know that you've got the most? Like, was you competing with the other highly qualified one?
So just before I finished my last qualification, I emailed the Chartered Institute of Taxation and asked them if anybody else had all of the qualifications that I did, and they said not as far as they were aware. And indeed, the professional bodies that I'm a member of, you can search for people online so you can see if they're a member. So I've had a little look to see if there's anybody else with all the qualifications that I have, and the answer is no.
Do you know who the person is that's like close?
I've had a look. I think there is somebody, but I can't remember their name.
Yeah, do you not like compete with them? Because if that was me, like say if I was that other person, I'd be like, right, he's got these ones, like I'm gonna overtake.
Well,
like,
between me and you, I'm sitting another qualification at the moment.
Okay, yeah, so he's never gonna catch up.
Stay one step ahead.
So how many tax qualifications do you have?
So they're not all tax specific, but I have 8 qualifications at the moment relating to accountancy.
Did you always know that you wanted to go into being an accountant?
I actually wanted to be a doctor at first instance. Like my dad is a doctor, and then he effectively put me off it. I did work experience at a hospital and decided it wasn't really for me.
Yeah.
And I was also going into it for the money rather than to treat patients, which is not a good thing to do. So I changed to the accountancy economics a bit later on, doing my A-levels, and then did a degree in accountancy and finance, and then have been in tax ever since. That was in 2014 when I first started.
You studied with Kaplan, yeah? What was your experience like?
It was really good, really good. So I was at the Manchester office, which I did my ACAs there. I then did my CTA partly here and partly at your Islington office. And then I chose to do part of my Society of Trust and Estate Practitioner through Kaplan by doing one of the CTA advanced technical papers. And again, that was at the Islington office. So I was travelling down there to do the tuition there. But I think that the online resources are excellent. I think the tutors are excellent, and you know, they did me well.
Did Kaplan support you at all with your studies?
Yeah, they did. So they had an academic support email that was really useful. So if I was reading through an exam paper, I'd look at the mark scheme and I just couldn't work out what the mark scheme was doing, I could send it to the Kaplan's academic support. And normally within a few hours, I'd get a response, and it was often very detailed response by someone that clearly knew what they were talking about. And actually other providers don't give that.
Did you use it a lot?
Towards the exam points, yes, I did. Yeah, I used it quite a lot, and they always came back to me. One of the other providers, who shall remain nameless, actually closed their academic support a week prior to the exam, which is actually the point that you most need it. So I was very unhappy with that particular provider.
Would you say, because there is that kind of idea that if you was an accountant, you have to be good at maths, and I know that there are a lot of people that say like, oh, you don't have to be, like, you've got like technology that does it for you. But was you good at maths at school? Is that why you went? Is that why you went into it?
Not completely, but yeah, I was relatively competent at maths, I would say. Yeah.
And do you think that you always kind of push yourself to do more? Because obviously the most tax qualifications that's a lot. So do you love studying?
I don't mind it. Yeah, yeah. I always think, if I've got free time, why not spend it doing something productive?
Yeah.
And I actually enjoy the process, unlike most people. Most people will do their 3 years, do their ACA or their CTA, and say, right, I'm done with it. But I was almost the opposite. I wanted to keep doing them, I was just hungry for more.
Yeah. Have you ever failed an exam?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Very first exam, yeah. So a little bit of a story behind that. So I'd done a 4-year accounting and finance degree, so I actually did a year in France as part of that. And then our very first exam was accountancy, basic principles of accountancy with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. And I thought, oh, I've done 4 years, I don't need to do any revision, like surely I know all this, so I didn't do any work for it at all. And then I failed it. And that was rather embarrassing, walking in the next day with all the other graduates who'd done like biology or statistics or something at university, and they'd all passed, and I, having done a 4-year degree, had failed it.
It was like a humbling experience.
It was, yeah. I was slapped down to reality by the ICAW.
Did it make you take it seriously? Like, did you fail anymore in
No.
the future?
No, not after that. After I realised, oh, okay, I've actually got to put a lot of work into this.
How did you kind of come back from it? Because obviously you've on a high, straight down to a low. Did it not make you want to give up?
No, and at the firm that I was at, if I failed it again, I would have got sacked. So it was quite a pressure on passing it.
Yeah, how do you handle that stress?
With great difficulty at the time, because effectively your job's on the line. I'd worked awfully hard, done lots of applications, got through multiple stage interviews, done the summer internship there, got offered the graduate job there, and there I was. If I failed that exam the next time, I would have been sacked, I would have been out the door.
Do you have advice for people that are in a similar position to what you was in just then?
I think making exams your priority is important. So it's not like you go out and see friends and then you do a bit of revision on the side or whatever. No, you do revision, and then maybe you'll watch half an hour of a football match, or maybe you'll see your friends on the side. But what you do is that exam.
Yeah.
And then hopefully once you get to the point where you know that you know it, the stress will release on the basis that you know you're going to go into that exam and you will pass it.
Yeah. Would you say that the short-term kind of sacrifices are worth it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is short-term pain, and you don't have a life often when you're sitting these exams, but you have to accept that.
Yeah.
And then ultimately it comes good.
Do you know that you're saying, like, because obviously these sacrifices, like social sacrifices, social life, but then you've chosen to do it 8 more times. Is it just you've managed to work out how to balance it?
I've worked out how to balance it. So, for example, when I drive to and from work, I take my notes for whichever exam I'm studying for, I put it through a text-to-speech AI generator, and then I listen to my own notes to and from. So that's like 45 minutes a day each way that I've got effectively for free. That I wouldn't be listening to the radio or something like that.
That's really good advice. Like, for anyone that is studying, that's really good advice. You left one of the big 4 to go to a smaller firm.
That's right.
What made you choose that?
I was offered a lot more responsibility from much earlier on, and I was also able to control my own career to a much greater extent. At the Big 4, after 3 years, everybody effectively had to specialise. So they had to specialise in one area of tax and do that particular area of tax for the next 40 years of their career, or however long their career was. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be more of a general practitioner in terms of tax.
That's amazing. So I'm going to jump straight into a game called Word Association.
Okay.
So I'm going to read out a series of words and just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. So, tax.
Fun.
Exams.
Progression.
Finance.
Rules the world.
Fear.
Failure.
Career.
Marathon, not sprint.
Big 4.
Giant.
Travel.
Fun.
Education.
Happiness.
Forensic.
CSI Miami.
Power.
Strength.
Luxury.
Yacht.
Home.
Didsbury.
Achievement.
Success.
Dinner.
Steak and chips.
Kaplan.
Excellent accountancy tuition provider.
Yeah, there we go. I'm pretty sure like every word that you've just given me was pretty positive. And then it's like the only one that obviously fails, like failure, but still that's quite a positive way to respond to that. Is that just your mindset as a person? Is that how you approach things?
I think there's an element of that. Yeah. If I think that I failed at something, I think I'm scared of failing in essence. And I don't want to fail, and so I make sure that I don't.
Yeah.
Which again comes at a cost. But to me that cost is worth it.
Obviously you said about when you was working at a bigger corporation and the cost of failing would have been losing your job. Why do you think, this is going to sound like a therapy question, but like, why do you think that you're afraid of failing?
Potentially from my parents. They were both successful in their careers, and there's an element of monkey see, monkey do. So if I wasn't as successful as they were, then I think I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Do you have siblings?
I do, yeah.
Competitive?
There's an element of competition, yeah.
What do they do?
So my brother was at the Treasury for 7 years, and now he works for JP Morgan in London.
So you're all pretty successful.
If that's the metric on which you measure success, yes, we are.
She said tax and fun. So, going off the stereotype, people would either see tax as, I don't know if I'd say boring, but I'll say boring or difficult.
Yeah.
I know, like, obviously everyone has to pay tax, but like in my world, no one really understands it. So why would you describe it as fun? How do you see it?
Because it solves problems, and a lot of our economic policy is based on tax. So taxation is effectively the interaction between economics and politics. And there's so much to it, and there's so many ways that you can help people when you're looking at their tax affairs. Like, if you asked me for a 3-letter enjoyable word ending with an X, I would of course say tax.
So for people like me who don't really understand tax, can you explain what you do in simple terms?
So tax is a payment that everybody must make to the government. Now, where I come in is deciding, or at least helping taxpayers in working out how much they need to pay to the government and whether there's a way to mitigate the amount that they pay via completely legal methods. So in some examples, I might have a client that comes to me and say, I have a company, I want to buy this company, how do I structure it in a tax efficient manner?
Yeah.
Or I might say, I have an employee, I want to reward them with some shares because I want to give them some equity in the business. How do I do that in a tax efficient manner? Or I might have another company that says, the current company structure isn't working for me. How do I restructure to make it more efficient from a commercial perspective? And then we can come in and assist them in that.
And how did you know when you were studying, say your degree, you were studying your degree and ICAEW, was that the first one after your degree?
That's right, yeah.
When you were doing both of them, because obviously accounting and finance, that's a whole big thing. How did you know, like, this is what I want to do, like, this is why I love tax?
So I knew that I wanted to be an accountant, and broadly there's sort of tax or audit within accountancy. And I actually got an internship at Santander in internal audit in their headquarters in London for around 3 months in around 2011. And I did that for 3 months and I thought, I never want to do that again. Auditing was just not for me. It is great for some people. So I then looked into tax and what that involved and found it really interesting. And part of the difference between tax and audit is with tax, you're advising clients. So you're helping them to achieve what they want to achieve. Audit is more about checking what the client has done already and check that there's no material misstatements within the accounts.
Would you say that it's a creative career?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's many ways to structure a transaction, and your job is to come up with creative ways to structure a transaction or help the client achieve their goals and give them the options and say, these are your options, what do you want to do? But in order to get to that point, you have to know the underlying tax.
Do you commute to work, or is it?
No, I'm in work every day. I'm in work 5 days a week, even though I don't have to be, but I love going to work.
What would your dream commute be? So there's no limitations. It's who are you travelling with? What are you listening to? What are you eating? And what's your mode of transport?
So who am I travelling with? Well, I'm travelling with my beautiful girlfriend. Slight problem with that is that she doesn't exist at the moment. I'm on it. I would like to have a commute that was from maybe along a beach, like a nice walk, in the sun. I'm not a morning person, so the commute would start at around 9 o'clock and finish at around 9:10 when I get into work, because I just can't get up early. Never have been able to, never will be
9
able
o'clock
to.
in the morning, you say it?
Yeah, leave the house at 9 in the morning.
And you're not a morning person?
I'm not a morning person, no. I actually did a genetic test, the 23andMe test, and it said that I should wake up at about 8:28 every morning. And I thought, yeah, that's about right.
Is that what that test does?
It did, yes, if you pay for the full results. Okay. It tells you all sorts of bizarre things, like whether you've got crispy or waxy earwax.
Yeah, because it's just because you said you was a morning person, then you said 9 o'clock in the morning, and to me, not a morning person is like an afternoon.
Oh, right, okay, sorry. In terms of morning, I can get up at 8 if I have to, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't choose to.
Yeah, to be fair, with everything that you do, like you love work, you go in 5 days a week even though you don't have to. Tax. I would think that you was a morning person. I feel like it suits you really well, if that.
I feel like I should be as well.
Yeah.
But then some people come in, like my colleagues were saying to me today that he'd been up since 5 and been to the gym before work. People that go to the gym before work, I'm always vaguely suspicious of.
So we're going with Commute. We're going to. Did you say along
Along a beach, I lived in New Zealand when I was younger,
Okay.
and there was a beach not far from the house, and you could walk along it. It wasn't obviously a commute. I was 7. I wasn't working, but it was very, very nice to have a nice walk along the beach in nature.
And what would you be listening to?
I tend to listen to podcasts on the way to and from work. As I say, if I'm doing an exam, then I'll be listening to the annotated notes of that particular exam, the course notes. But if I'm not, then I listen to like true crime podcasts or a lot of like story podcasts. And then there's also a lot of tax podcasts as well.
Snacks, dream commute, what would you be eating?
I'm a big fan of protein bars, so I would eat a lot of protein bars. I've got hundreds at home.
So if you could go back in time and make or change any financial decision, what would it be?
I would have bought Bitcoin in 2010, probably.
I thought, is Bitcoin not going like down now?
Yes, it's sort of wavering at the moment, but it's still massively up from where it's ever been.
Do you do any investing?
I did, and to some extent I still do. So there's been a couple of big crypto crashes, and I had crypto before the previous crash, and then this last crash I actually didn't lose any money, which was very clever of me because I'd lost it all in the previous one.
What, so did you invest in it, it didn't go to plan?
Precisely that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants that coin, that crypto that's going to 10x or go to the moon, as they say.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I chose the ones that went to 0.
What do you think the next big trend's going to be?
So potentially it could be DeFi, which is decentralized finance, where you can effectively borrow crypto and use it to pay debts, etc.
Like a loan?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a loan, but instead of having one broker, you have multiple brokers in effect. And that, I think, could become really big.
So is there dangers in that?
Absolutely. Huge dangers in that if my money goes missing from the bank that I bank with, then I give them a call and there might be a long process, but eventually I'll get the money back if somebody fraudulently steals the money out of my account. If you own a Bitcoin, it's all decentralized. So it's not like you can phone up Bitcoin and ask for your Bitcoin bank. Once it's gone, it's gone.
So if you work in tax, how do you know all of this?
So we got big into crypto tax as part of the firm's progression. Crypto taxation, not many firms were doing it. It was quite a new area. I then did the certified cryptocurrency expert qualification to help me with the underlying technology of cryptocurrency. And then we've been sort of specialising in crypto ever since and growing our crypto practice.
What about if it was a decision that you did that you couldn't have made? Like, if you could change anything in the past? What would it be?
So I would have not introduced the loan charge tax, which was a hugely controversial tax that's caused massive disruption and 11 suicides as of today's date.
Okay, so what is that? Sorry.
So it's a tax for. So there's quite a long backstory to it, but to summarise, there was effectively a scheme where you could take cash out of a company or indeed be paid via a loan instead of via salary, which meant that you could, in theory, avoid the tax. But a lot of people got put into this without knowing. And then HMRC sort of sat on their hands for years and years and years, and then introduced what's effectively a retrospective loan charge tax, and brought people who thought that their tax affairs were finished back into the tax bracket. So they landed them with enormous tax bills that they were never expecting. And I actually got asked to speak to MPs about this in Westminster in November of last year.
Okay. Were you on the TV?
I wasn't on TV, no. It was part of the loan charge, all-party parliamentary group.
So you went from one of the big four to a smaller firm. What was the transition like?
So it was very different at a smaller firm because I didn't have as much support, which you might see as a bad thing. That's mainly because there wasn't as many people there. So that when I joined the firm that I'm at now, which is Alexander & Co., there was only 5 people in the tax team. So it's a very, very small firm. And before, I had a big chain of people working around me. So I had to effectively sort of make my own way through, say, legislation, or clients would ask me a question and I would have to find the answer myself. It also meant that I couldn't rely on other people's specialisms. So if a client come up to me with a question that I didn't know the answer to, it was up to me to find the answer to that question, rather than asking somebody else in the firm.
And that's a good thing in a sense where you're responsible for your own actions. Does that help you learn better as well?
I think so, yeah. You can learn from your mistakes, and obviously I made a lot of mistakes when I first joined the firm. Not that ever went out to clients, but that went to the partner and it got reviewed, and he said, no, this is wrong, you've gone about this in the wrong way. And that was supremely useful, because I was doing it all off my own back and trying to work out what the correct answer was, the correct solution was, or the best set of options for the client.
People-wise, like, do you think that the work culture in general is different from a bigger company than it is from a smaller one?
Yes, I would say so. I think we're a lot more collaborative at a smaller firm, and people are a lot more open about, for example, their personal lives.
Yeah.
So at the firm that I'm at the moment, people are sort of very open and honest, and everybody goes out a lot with each other, and people are happy to share stuff that at a bigger firm, and I only have experience from one Big Four firm, people would not have been happy to share about the details about their personal or private lives at a big firm.
Yeah. Do you think, to put words in your mouth, would you say that a bigger firm is more like dog eat dog?
Yes, I would say it is. It is a lot more competitive at the bigger firm.
So looking at the other side, is there anything that you preferred at the bigger firm than that you don't have?
Yeah, so the size of clients that you're working with. So the big firms, you are very often working with stuff that you will see on the front pages of the Financial Times. You're working on deals of that size. At the smaller firms, it's much less high profile, or a lot of the clients are much less high profile.
So move on to another game, and it's called Rank These. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is read out 3 options, and you'll rank them between like 1, the best, 2, so all right, and 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So apprenticeships, university, or online study?
University, online study, apprenticeships.
What's the reason for that?
So I went to university and I loved university, and it wasn't just about getting the degree, it was about spending 4 years of your life having a lot of fun, really.
Yeah.
Then online studying, I'm not a massive fan of, although obviously since COVID the world has become that way. And then apprenticeships, they're good, but I don't have a huge amount of experience with them. I did do an apprenticeship for my ACA CTA, but it's not something that I have like a huge affinity to. I got a level 7. I think there's a lot to be said for apprenticeships, because we've got guys in our department in our firm that started apprenticeship I think at 18. Within 5 years they were ACA qualified, and so on, like a nice salary and 0 student debt. Whereas for me, obviously for years and years, I had my sort of gross salary, and then you look down at the bottom of this little number, which is the net. The reason it's called gross is because it's gross how much the government takes off you.
Do you know, like, because you work in tax and it's like, do you ever like clash with HMRC? Like, do you look at these policies and stuff and think I could do a better job than that?
Yeah. I have quite an active Twitter account criticising various government policies and supporting if I think that they're good. But yeah, I'll quite often say that is a stupid tax policy. Maybe it would be different if I was actually the one drafting the policy itself. But certainly I will criticise what I think is poor tax policy.
Yeah.
And we do clash with HMRC in the job. It's part of the job, because HMRC are on the other side, effectively. Although we tend to get on largely pretty well most of the time, but quite often we'll disagree on a certain point of law.
Yeah. Just going back to your answers before, because you rated online learning in the middle. Are the majority of your qualifications not through online learning?
Probably around half are online learning.
So how do you find that?
Well, I had no other choice. I always wanted to sit them in person if I could, but a lot of them, particularly after COVID, were online only, and therefore it became I had to sit them online.
And it's indifferent. You just...
Yeah, I just prefer being around people. Again, it's why I'm in the office 5 days a week. I prefer, chatting to people at the break time, chatting to the tutor about any queries I have at lunchtime or whatever.
In your work now, do you think, are there other people, is everyone that you work with, like, sociable like you are?
Yes, yeah, they are. Yeah, people, we hire people that are sociable, I would say. That's part of you've got to have sufficient banter to work at Alexander & Co.
What are the type of interview questions that you'd ask him to get that?
So it's not necessarily have you got sufficient banter, it's more of a how they come across and how they come across to each other, to us in the interview. And it's also looking at, are they going to be able to make a connection with clients? Because at the end of the day, clients, whilst to some extent they look for Alexander & Co, they're actually looking for a person. They're probably going to approach a person at Alexander & Co. And so they have to be able to make that connection with clients. And if they struggle to make the connection with us in the interview, then it's quite likely they're going to struggle to really connect well with the clients and make the clients feel at ease and have a bit of a fun, a bit of a laugh with the clients.
Yeah, so you say like in the type of job that you do, like communication and a good personality is important.
Certainly in the job that I do. And I think this is true, and not just in tax, but in many professional services. If you are technically very hot, but you have an inability to actually get on with people and communicate and sell to people, I think there'll be a ceiling. You might get to manager, you might even get to senior manager, but you've really struggled to get to the director or partner in a professional services firm. So you have to be good technically, but there's a big focus on getting on with people, being able to communicate what you want, and effectively being able to have people buy into what you're selling.
And what would you say to people who say that, like, the finance industry and people that work in finance just work behind a computer?
Some of the stereotypes are true. Not at my firm, but there are some people that work in finance or accounts or audit that are deathly boring. These kind of people that you see them at a dinner party, you see the empty chair next to them and you think, oh God. But in general, people in finance and accounts, they're going to need, if they want to progress, they're going to have to be able to communicate. They're going to have to be able to get on with other people. So most of the time, you'll find that they're actually more personable than you might expect, and less rigid.
Yeah, I found that, like, when I've been to like award ceremonies and stuff with people in the industry, and everyone's really sociable, which completely like challenges like all my preconceptions of accountants before this job. I'm going to go through another one. Time, money or knowledge?
Knowledge, then money, and then time. The reason I say that is because I think to some extent money can buy you time. It can buy you freedom, it can buy you independence and opportunity. But knowledge, I think, is the most important, because no one can ever take that away from you. You can lose all your money, you can lose everything, you can lose your house, your car. You're never going to lose your knowledge. That's
a really good answer. And food, water or tax?
I mean, water's probably more important than tax.
I don't know, it's your decision.
I mean, I would say water, food, then tax.
Really?
Yeah, you can probably survive without tax a lot longer than you can survive without food or water.
Okay, good answer. So, if you could go back in time and meet your younger self, what advice would you give him?
I would try to be more disciplined from an earlier age. I certainly, for example, the failing of the exam when I was 21 or 22, I was obviously disappointed about that, and that was essentially a bit of arrogance. I think I was a bit arrogant in that I thought I knew it all, and I wish I hadn't been that, and that probably came out elsewhere in my life.
What are your plans for the future? Because obviously, from where I'm standing, like, you're constantly learning and you're doing really well, career-wise and like qualification-wise, but then you'd go back and tell your younger self to start earlier, essentially. So is there something that's like missing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to be a better tennis player than I am. Like, if I guess my dream job would have been, you know, a professional tennis player, but I'm nowhere near as good enough, and I never will be. Certainly not at 32. And I feel like, you know, maybe if things had been different, I could have done that.
So if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, would you seek a different career?
No, I wouldn't. Unless I thought I was going to make it as a professional tennis player. There's just no way. I'm just dreaming. There's no way that I could have ever made it. I was mediocre at
Never
best.
know.
No, I just was never going to make it. And I loved playing tennis, but I love tax. You know, I think it was Confucius that said, "Find a job that you love and never work a day in your life."
So thank you so much for joining us today. Have you had a good time?
I have, thank you.
So before we let you go, what does career goals mean to you?
I think it means achieving what you want to do in your own career. And I don't think that that's the only achievement that people should be judged on. So some people might want to travel the world and live a nomadic lifestyle. And if they can do that, good on them. Or they might want to have kids and have a family early and aren't bothered about the careers. Again, then they've achieved what they want to. But for me, career goals means achieving what you want to do in your own career and getting as far as you can with that.
Thank you for watching, and if you're interested in seeking a career in tax, have a look at our website at kaplan.co.uk. Remember to like, comment, subscribe and turn your notifications on, and we will see you again soon.